In this week's video, we're going to be flying from Honolulu to San Francisco with Alaska Airlines. Now, I originally booked this flight and this seat to talk about the whole Boeing 737 MAX door plug drama. This was filmed less than a month after the whole event occurred. I booked a seat in the same row as the infamous door plug and sat for the full 5 hours with my seatbelt very well fastened, waiting for my moment to experience the most wild plane ride possible. But no, thankfully for all involved, that clearly did not happen. So it's time to pivot, baby. Everyone and their dog already knows about the MAX meltdown at Boeing, so we're not going to get into that one. But instead, let's talk about how Alaska Airlines hasn't really been Alaskan in years, who this guy is, and why I've had a soft spot for the airline for over 10 years despite not setting foot in one of their planes until just now. Today we're in Hawaii, flying to San Francisco on Alaska Airlines, snagged myself a seat in the row behind the door plug or right where the door plug is. I'm not 100% sure. It's a beautiful day here in Hawaii.
You gonna act like that was a cop?
Hello, good morning. Perfect, all right. Thank you. Now we've got 4 hours in Honolulu Airport. Despite being a bit old, not having the best lounges or amenities, and generally having awful reviews, I actually kinda like Honolulu Airport. There's something about the indoor-outdoor design and the island vibes about the place that gives me this nostalgic feeling. Interestingly, it's also huge, being over 4,000 acres. It's pretty much as big as downtown Waikiki. And here's a quick, interesting tangent. In 1953, Honolulu Airport built a new runway. It was huge, 3,992 meters to be exact. So long that at the time,
it was the world's longest.
And this got me thinking, what's the world's longest runway today?
I looked it up.
You looked it up.
And what I found was that it's currently tied between
I got this.
Ulyanovsk Vostochny Airport in Russia and Shigatse Peace Airport in Tibet. Now, why do they have such long runways? Well, Ulyanovsk is home to Aviastar. They're the manufacturer of the Antonov 124 and some of the Tupolev planes. Basically, they make planes, and you're better off with a big runway when testing new planes. But why does a random airport in Tibet with a whole 2 flights a day have one of the world's longest runways? It is a military base, so who knows what the Chinese military is getting up to there.
No, the plane, it's always fine on me.
But no, primarily it's this long because of the airport's elevation.
It's high.
It's one of the highest airports in the world with an elevation of 12,408 feet.
Would that be Quentin Tarantino?
The air's thinner, there's less lift and less thrust. Anyway, this sent me down another tangent and answered a question that I never really knew that I had. Why don't planes fly over Tibet? It all comes down to the Tibetan Plateau. This region has an average elevation of 14,000 feet. So if the door plug on your brand new aircraft happened to just not be bolted in properly and you end up with a gaping hole in the side of your plane, what do? Ideally, you'd descend to below 10,000 feet so that everyone can breathe. This doesn't really work over Tibet, does it? That's why airlines will avoid flying over this region. Enough of this massive tangent. Let's get back to the airport and the actual flight.
Boy, can that guy go on and on. Tangent after tangent.
I'm flying this leg in economy, obviously. They aren't putting the boltless door plugs up in first class, but thankfully your boys recently got some Qantas status from all this flying, and so I could visit the joint American Airlines and JAL lounge. It's kind of out of the way and down this weird hallway, and that's sort of just the start of the strangeness here. The catering was a mix of Japanese and I guess American, which I found quite jarring, really. You had the most 3-star middle American buffet breakfast looking pancake machine next to this kitchen area where they were serving a couple of Japanese curries. The decor was very classy, very Japanese, but then there was this guy who decided to bring in his own Burger King just into the lounge. I mean, I guess you can do it. I'm kind of imagining the looks I'd get if I brought a KFC family bucket into the El Safwa lounge, but I digress. This Burger King breakthrough then triggered a bit of a movement. A whole rather loud family, I'm not gonna say what race, what people. They were American, decided that they too wanted burgers from Burger King. So at one point there, 5 out of the maybe 25 people in this lounge were munching down on some burgers.
Are we at Burger King, folks?
I was luckily far enough away to not catch a whiff. Otherwise, you'd be seeing me munch on some Burger King here instead of some of the most processed and questionable pancakes ever made. The final oddity of this lounge. It doesn't have its own toilets, but instead they direct you to just outside into that oddly long hallway to a set of public toilets. These were some of the nicest airport toilets I think I've ever seen outside of Japan. They had the full Japanese bidet setup, really clean, and available to anybody as they're technically not in the lounge. This could definitely be something to remember.
There she is.
Do you want me to put it up here? No worries. Hi. That was a bit chaotic, wasn't it? What is going on? 7:27. I did say earlier that I booked a seat as close as possible to the infamous door plug. I ended up in 27C. Just for context, here was the view from 27B. You probably wouldn't notice that you're sitting next to the door plug unless you were particularly cued into the window pattern. As you can see here, it kind of gets interrupted by this mega panel. Wow, what time zone am I in? Anyway, in the back rear lab here, it's actually quite similar to of course it is. It's the same as the Virgin Australia one that we did a few days ago. It's that modern Boeing 737 style. Very basic. I don't mind the design all around. It's fine. Was there something I had to say? Oh yeah, generally flight is going well. The door hasn't flown off. The Max is fine. It's very similar to a 737 to be honest. Alaska Airlines is pretty good. I mean, they don't serve meals or anything. It's about a 5-hour flight, or just under 5-hour flight. But we had a snack service at the beginning with something. Oh yeah, with like those pretzel stick things. They were alright. And then drinks, obviously. And then they just did another one where they gave us some Biscoff.
Planet, what's your diagnosis? Jet lag?
And another quick drinks service. So generally, yeah, like it's not bad service. And also I got a little chocolate, I think because I have some status now, One World status, so that was nice of them, I guess. Got Just Entertainment. It's just streaming, Wi-Fi streaming, but that's fine. I've got my phone just plugged in and I'm watching some Parks and Recs, TV shows, stuff like that. I'm a bit just over sitting on planes at this point, but apart from that, yeah, not bad. In the intro, I mentioned that I have a soft spot for Alaska Airlines, even though I've never actually flown them until now. So why is that? It's all because of their mileage plan. If we rewind to about a decade ago,
when I was, 16 years old,
and I'm becoming quite obsessed with the idea of booking business class tickets using points. The problem was, I was 15. I couldn't get credit cards or buy points. I couldn't really do much of anything. But fortunately, my mum is both incredible and maybe a little bit crazy because she actually listened to everything I was saying. Back then, Alaska Airlines mileage plan had some remarkable sales. You could get 40 to 50% bonus points when purchasing miles, and at that time, the Australian dollar was very strong against the US dollar. So I proposed that for our next trip, we should buy a bunch of miles and try to do some of the legs in business class. For some remarkable reason, my mum actually agreed. We spent a few $1,000s. I want to say more than 2, but less than 3. And thanks to that favorable exchange rate, we were able to travel around the world with some of the major legs in business class. Alaska Airlines wasn't part of One World back then, but they had partnerships with several airlines like Cathay Pacific, Qantas, British Airways, Emirates. I was able to book some fairly complex itineraries on Cathay Pacific, and it felt like I discovered some secret hack or something. It was incredible. Experiencing business class and booking it all at that point in my life, in many ways, set us on a path to where we are today with this YouTube channel. I should also mention at one point, our flights all got cancelled due to a cyclone in New York, and I had to call Alaska Airlines to sort everything out. I was 16, I was calling up to modify a pretty complicated reward ticket, and their customer service was extremely friendly and helpful the whole way through. So I guess I've got to say a big thank you to my mum and to Alaska Airlines for getting us to where we are today. Whilst this flight was nothing really that special, it was good to finally step foot on one of their planes. Okay, this week's ad is a little bit exclusive. If you're not in the upper middle class tax bracket, please just skip forward. Just skip this. Okay, so now that we're just left with the mildly wealthy gang, what's up guys? Let's talk about buying points, more specifically buying wine just for the points. Now, as I've just said with Alaska Airlines mileage plan, you can sometimes buy points directly from airlines and get a pretty good deal on some business class tickets. Qantas does sell points directly, but it's not a great deal. Let's just dive into the numbers and stick with me here. Qantas will sell you points, and if you buy quite a lot of them, they'll sell them to you at a rate of 2.6 to 2.7 cents per point. This isn't really a bargain, and there is a better way. Qantas Wines. Now, this isn't an ad for Qantas Wines, but look, if they want to give me money, I'm purely a vessel for capitalism, so let's go. But no, some of the wines they sell give you a bunch of promo points. For instance, there was this Let's Travel bundle, which was 12 bottles of wine, red wine, for $498, but this netted you 24,000 bonus points along with the wine. This gives you a cents per point value of 2.08. Now, to quantify this, I'm just going to use Melbourne to Hong Kong as an example. If you were to book this in one way in business class, it would cost you around $3,800 or up to $4,500, depending on the dates. But if you're able to book this as a reward seat, this would cost you 68,400 points and $160 in fees. So if you're following along, what you could do is buy 36 bottles of wine for $1,494, get the 72,000 points, and then for a total price of around $1,650, you could be sitting up in business class on the way to Hong Kong, absolutely sloshed from drinking 36 bottles of wine. To make it all a bit easier to find, I've got the wine tracker tool on the flightformula.com website. This tool just finds the best deals on the Qantas Wines website on a points per dollar basis. Recently, I've launched Wine Tracker Plus. This gives you email alerts and SMS alerts, if you're in Australia, on the top wine deals when they appear, so you can snag the best ones before they're gone. Just for context, the best ever deal detected was a Shiraz, and it had a cents per point value of 1.15. i.e. that flight to Hong Kong with fees would have cost you about $975. If this sounds like something that you'd be interested in, or if you just want to support the channel, because I'll probably never do a Patreon, this is the closest we'll ever get, I'll put a link down below in the description. Cool. Also, yeah, for the astute in the audience, you'll realize this isn't 36. I think we've got 20 something. I don't have 36 bottles. And also, they're all sealed, right? I don't have a drinking problem. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Towards the end of the flight, the couple sitting next to me told the flight attendants they needed to catch the last BART train. They weren't sure if they were going to make it in time and asked if they could move to the front of the plane to disembark first. I realized that I also needed to catch that last train, but I guess I was going to have to sprint if necessary. This meant that for the last hour of the flight, I had the entire row to myself. Not bad at all. Despite the name, Alaska Airlines is actually headquartered in Seattle, Washington. The airline's roots go back to 1932, when it started as McGee Airways in Anchorage, with just a single 3-passenger plane. In the 1940s, they moved their headquarters to Seattle to better manage their expanding operations along the West Coast. Over the years, through mergers and acquisitions, they evolved into the Alaska Airlines that we know today. They've definitely had their fair share of unique stories, though, that I think add a bit of color to their history. For instance, did you know that one of their planes was once struck by a fish? Yes, a fish. Back in 1987, an Alaskan Airlines flight was approaching Juneau when a salmon collided with the aircraft. Turns out that a bald eagle had snatched the fish from the ocean but lost its grip mid-flight, and the unlucky salmon ended up hitting the plane. Then there was the time when they had a run-in with a bear. They just keep on hitting animals.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
In 2020, an Alaskan Airlines plane was landing at Yakutat Airport in Alaska when it struck a brown bear that had wandered onto the runway. No passengers or crew were injured, but the plane did sustain some damage, and the bear definitely did not survive.
Bear's sad, worm's happy. Come on, Aaron.
On a more somber note, there was also the incident involving Richard Russell, also known as the Sky King meme. In 2018, a ground service agent for Horizon Air, a subsidiary of Alaska Airlines, managed to take off in an empty turboprop plane from Seattle Airport. He flew it around the Puget Sound area, performing some pretty daring maneuvers, speaking with air traffic controllers the whole time. Honestly, the clips of the audio are pretty depressing. He was clearly having a bit of a mental episode and ended up crashing onto a remote island.
Just a broken guy. Got a few screws loose, I guess. Never really knew it until now.
Back to the airline's growth and how they're shaping up today. In 2016, they acquired Virgin America. This was a pretty significant turning point for the airline. It expanded their presence along the West Coast, especially in California. They inherited Virgin America's hubs in San Francisco and LA, turning them into a major player in those markets. Today, they're the 5th largest airline in the United States, and they're not stopping there. They've just been steadily growing, adding new routes and increasing their fleet. They've recently announced that they're going to acquire Hawaiian Airlines. To some degree, this would sort of turn them into the non-contiguous American airlines. Not everyone agrees with these acquisitions, but I think they've done a good job of maintaining high customer satisfaction while they grow. They consistently receive top marks for their service, punctuality, and overall passenger experience. As I've made it clear, I have a soft spot for the airline, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they expand in the future. Slight tangent here, but whenever I fly over the San Francisco Bay Area, I can't help but feel sort of a sense of awe. If you can't tell, I'm a bit of a tech head programmer bro, so I think it's pretty remarkable that so much modern technology has originated from this relatively small area. I don't know if anyone else feels that way whenever they fly over Silicon Valley, but for me, it's just a bit of a humbling experience, I guess. And finally, the big question: who is the guy on the tail of the Alaska Airlines planes? To answer this, let's go back to the 1970s. Alaska Airlines wanted a new image that truly captured their Alaskan roots. They experimented by painting 4 different logos on their planes. Back then, they had just 9 Boeing 727s, so this wasn't a major task. They experimented with a native Alaskan Inuit face that we know today, a gold miner, a totem pole, and a Russian cathedral dome. After some time, it was clear that the native Alaskan face resonated the most with passengers and staff. So of course, that's what they went with. But who is this? Who is this man with a smile? Alaska Airlines hasn't officially confirmed who the face is. They say it's a composite, representing the spirit of Alaska and its people. But for years, people have debated between 2 individuals, Chester Sevek and Oliver Amuak. Chester Sevek was a respected Inupiat from Kotzebue in Alaska. He was like the Alaskan version of a Hawaiian lay greeter. When tourists arrived, he'd warmly welcome them and help them into fur-lined parkas to keep out of the Arctic chill. On the other hand, Oliver Amuak was known for promoting Alaskan culture alongside his wife, Mary. They starred in travel films and stage shows during the 1950s and 60s, becoming ambassadors for the state of Alaska. So who is it? Is it either of these guys? How do we figure this out? If we just look at this one poster featuring Oliver, I think it's pretty obvious. If I just put this up next to the Alaska Airlines logo, the features all line up remarkably well. The eyes, the nose, the shadow, all match. But there is a slight difference in the expression. The logo's face just looks a little bit happier. This is where Chester might come in. Perhaps the friendly smile was inspired by Chester's warm welcome to travelers. Again, Alaska Airlines hasn't officially confirmed who the face is, but in my opinion, it's pretty much 99% Oliver. They've clearly taken that promotional picture, done a bunch of processing to it, and then just made him look slightly happier. Of course, it's nice to say that this is a composite representing the whole of Alaska, and I do like the idea that it is perhaps the friendly smile from Chester morphing into this image of Oliver. But I'm also just a bit of a skeptic. I'm guessing it's more of a composite way of getting out of any royalty payments. Either way, it is a nice, friendly face, and it does a good job of representing Alaska Airlines and the native Alaskans.
Oh boy. Get my bags. Hopefully I can get the last BART to the city.
I did make the train and had a couple of days in sketchy but still incredibly beautiful San Francisco. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Check out flightformula.com. Go subscribe to Wine Tracker Plus. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.